Phelan was an early riser, accustomed to greeting the day at the first crow of the roosters, without ever bemoaning her lot in life. How could she, when she had 3 children depending on her, especially after the loss of her husband in a tragic logging accident? Tristan, her 8-year-old and the eldest, would rise with her, eager to lend a hand wherever he could. "Mum, will you be coming home late again today?" Tristan asked with a hint of concern in his voice. "Yes, my dear. With my partner out sick, I have to pick up the extra work," Phelan answered, her tone gentle yet weary. Tristan paused, pondering, before suggesting, "Can I come with you to work? School's out for the holidays, and I'll follow all your instructions." Phelan offered a tender smile. "No, love. You're needed here to look after your homework and your siblings." Tristan was perceptive for his age, deeply attuned to the household's undercurrents. He was eager to support his mother, but Phelan knew his help was more valuable at home, caring for his younger siblings. In the kitchen, Phelan ignited the stove, setting a pot of water to boil for the morning's porridge. Her other 2 children, Dylan and little Aria, were still nestled in their beds. Dylan and Tristan, not her own by birth, were her late husband Raiden's sons from a previous marriage, abandoned by their biological mother for a new life elsewhere. Yet, Phelan never differentiated between them and Aria, her biological child. She showered all her children with unconditional love, never letting Raiden's death diminish her affection for Dylan and Tristan. In her heart, they were all her own, cherished equally and deeply. "We'll make do," Phelan often told herself, looking around the old house with a hopeful eye. "A few repairs here and there, and this place will come back to life. Just need to save up a bit." At a glance, her situation seemed manageable. A steady job at the warehouse, some assistance coming in. But the harsh reality was that money evaporated as quickly as it arrived. With young children prone to illness, Phelan found herself frequently taking time off to tend to their needs, rushing to the hospital more often than she'd have liked. The garden, however, was her small slice of solace. Come summer, it burst into life, its bounty the envy of any onlooker. The soil, rich and giving, yielded harvests so plentiful, one could hardly believe the toil it demanded. Phelan poured her heart and soul into that patch of earth, yet she chose to focus on its rewards rather than the relentless effort it required. A year had passed since Raiden's untimely departure, and Phelan's heart still bore the heavy weight of his absence. Their love had been a thing of beauty, pure and profound, leaving her breathless with its intensity. Raiden had a way of bringing joy into the simplest moments, often surprising her with wild daisies he'd picked on his way home. They weren't grand, but to Phelan, they were everything. She'd lovingly place them in an old vase on the kitchen table, a tender reminder of love's enduring presence. The house that Phelan called home bore a poignant story, tracing back to her teenage years. It was during spring break, just shy of her 16th birthday, that her life took an unexpected turn. With her parents attending a wedding in the city, Phelan had the choice to join them or enjoy her break with friends. Opting for the latter, she anticipated a typical weekend of teenage freedom. However, the tranquility of that decision was shattered the morning her parents were due back. An unexpected call from her Uncle Grant, her mother's brother, set a foreboding tone. It was unusual for him to call. He was the type to visit in person rather than reach out by phone. His words were few, laced with an affection that felt out of place, leaving Phelan with an unsettling feeling in the pit of her stomach. Her unease proved to be a grim premonition. Shortly after, 2 police officers appeared at her doorstep, their presence silent yet heavy with unspoken sorrow. The car ride to the station was engulfed in silence, the officers' somber expressions mirroring the dread building within Phelan. At the station, the sight of Uncle Grant, tears streaming down his face, confirmed her worst fears. Without understanding the full extent of the tragedy that had unfolded, Phelan was drawn into a shared grief, her tears joining his in a moment of profound loss. The details were yet to come, but in that instant, the foundation of her world began to shift. A police officer gently approached Phelan, breaking the devastating news that her parents had perished in a collision with a truck carrying a massive steel coil. The accident occurred because the coil's chains were inadequately secured, causing the load to shift and the truck to lose control on a turn. While the truck driver sustained only minor injuries, her parents were not as fortunate. In the aftermath, Phelan was engulfed in a numb sadness, her gaze often fixed blankly on the walls or the floor. The world around her, a blur. The weeks that followed were a fog of grief and confusion. Clinging to Uncle Grant, she navigated through the uncertainty, determined to avoid the foster care system due to her minor status. With the family home being a rental and her parents' dreams of buying their own place shattered, Phelan's only recourse was to move in with Uncle Grant. He resided in a modest house in a rural town, a property he inherited after their grandmother's passing. That first year without her parents was immeasurably difficult. Phelan frequently pondered the what-ifs, especially what might have happened had she accompanied her parents to the wedding. Such thoughts were draining, an endless cycle of might-have-beens. It was Uncle Grant who stood as her pillar through these tumultuous times. A hardened army veteran, he harbored deep-seated resentment towards his country for what he perceived as a betrayal of its servicemen. His story was complex, one he seldom discussed in detail, but it was evident he despised dependency and self-pity both in himself and others. Grant's resilience and stoic nature were what ultimately helped Phelan navigate the storm of her grief, offering a semblance of stability in a world turned upside down. Uncle Grant held a firm belief that with physical health and all limbs intact, a person could endure any situation life threw at them. This philosophy seemed particularly relevant to Phelan as she approached the end of her high school years and contemplated college. Little did she know, the lessons Grant imparted would prove invaluable in entirely unexpected ways. As Phelan matured into a stunning young woman, her remarkable beauty often turned heads. Although she was reserved, this didn't deter Hank, a classmate whose fondness for her was unmistakable. Unlike others who hesitated, Hank's feelings for Phelan were clear in the way he looked at her. His eyes sparkled with genuine admiration whenever their gazes met. One day, Hank found the courage to approach her. "Hey, Phelan," he said, his voice tinged with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Would you mind if I walked you home today?" Phelan, taken aback but pleasantly surprised, nodded. "Sure, Hank, that would be nice," she replied, her voice soft but warm. As they walked, the conversation flowed more easily than Phelan had anticipated, making her wonder why she hadn't noticed Hank's gentle nature before. However, when Grant learned about this budding friendship, he was less than thrilled, not because of Hank himself, but due to the shadow cast by his last name. "Phelan, please be cautious," Grant advised with a furrowed brow. "Our family has had issues with the Brooks before. It might be best to keep your distance." Unbeknownst to Grant, His reservations were based on a misunderstanding. Hank was indeed not from the family Grant had conflicts with, a fact that would come to light on one fateful day. Phelan's reserved nature, combined with the fact that she lived with her Uncle Grant, often fueled the rumor mill in their small community. There were unfounded whispers about her relationship with Uncle Grant, suggesting impropriety. Such rumors were absurd to Grant, who largely ignored them, focusing instead on Phelan's well-being and future. Upon graduating high school, college was not feasible due to financial constraints. Phelan opted to enter the workforce instead, a decision Uncle Grant supported, reassuring her that education could wait and practical skills could be acquired at any time, even from home. Phelan's first job was at a local store, where her youthful energy and enthusiasm earned her a position as a stocker. She thrived in the active role, appreciating the constant movement and demands of the job. Life settled into a routine of work and home for Phelan. Uncle Grant, mostly a homebody, devoted himself to his backyard garden, which provided nearly all his needs, negating the necessity for store-bought produce. This simple, self-sufficient lifestyle was a testament to the principles he lived by. For Phelan, the years passed in a blur of monotony, marked by the daily commute to work and quiet evenings at home. She found solace in reading, purchasing books to fill the serene nights, creating a peaceful rhythm to her life in the absence of academic or professional advancement. Her male colleagues at work often showered her with compliments, vying for her attention, but she remained largely indifferent to their advances. Her transition to the night shift as a stocker suited her even better. With fewer people around to distract her, she could focus on her work and enjoy the solitude. This new routine, working through the night and returning home in the early hours, became a comfortable rhythm for her life. Her interactions with Uncle Grant were sparse. They seldom engaged in deep conversation. Yet Phelan harbored a profound sense of gratitude for all he had done for her. She often wished to express her thanks verbally, but Grant's reserved nature led her to show her appreciation through actions instead, like preparing a special meal or meticulously ironing his clothes. Grant, for his part, could be curt and dismissive of her gestures, insisting he was fully capable of looking after himself, a trait undoubtedly reinforced by his military background. Despite his gruff exterior, Grant was fundamentally a guardian figure to Phelan, ensuring her well-being as a tribute to the love he held for his late sister. Grant, an early riser, had a habit of brewing fresh tea in anticipation of Phelan's return from her night shift. One morning, however, Phelan was unexpectedly delayed. Grant waited on the porch, tea in hand, puzzled by her absence. That morning had been routine for Phelan at work. Her final task was to stock the shelves with sparkling water bottles. It was still dark outside when she wrapped up, signaling the end of her shift and time to head home. As Phelan walked home through the deserted streets, she sensed an ominous presence trailing behind her. Her instincts kicked in and she quickened her pace, but as she rounded a corner, a chilling sensation overwhelmed her, a damp cloth smothering her breath. Regaining consciousness hours later, abandoned by the roadside, the harrowing truth hit her. She had been assaulted. Overwhelmed by anguish, Phelan stumbled home, her tears a silent testament to her ordeal. She retreated to the sanctuary of her bedroom, locking the world outside. Grant, puzzled by her sudden dash to seclusion, could sense something was amiss. The sound of her muffled cries behind the door halted his approach, choosing instead to give her the space he thought she needed. As the hours turned into days without a sign of Phelan, Grant's concern deepened. suspecting that her distress was more than just a fleeting emotional upset. When Phelan finally emerged, her spirit shattered. Grant's gentle inquiry was met with evasion. She attributed her state to work stress, hinting at a need for a break. However, the truth lay bare that afternoon when Grant inadvertently discovered stained clothing, a silent witness to the violence Phelan had suffered. Consumed by a fierce protectiveness and rage, Grant was driven to a place he hadn't visited in years. He opened a rarely used closet, reaching for a rifle that had lain dormant for over a decade, the gravity of the situation awakening a dormant resolve to act. Retrieving the rifle, Grant approached Phelan's room with a resolve hardened by years of military discipline. He gently implored her to share the identity of her assailant. The realization that Grant had uncovered the truth unleashed a torrent of emotions in Phelan, who, overcome by her ordeal, sought refuge in his embrace, her tears uncontrollable. Once she had regained some composure, Phelan pleaded with Grant not to disclose the incident to anyone. Despite his pressing, it became clear to Grant that Phelan genuinely had no idea who her attacker was. His frustration boiling over, Grant stormed into Phelan's workplace, confronting her colleagues in a desperate search for answers, his outburst leaving the staff in shock. Phelan's distress intensified upon learning of Grant's actions at her workplace, mortified that her personal trauma had been exposed. Despite the police report filed, the officers were skeptical about the prospects of apprehending the perpetrator, citing a lack of concrete evidence which only fueled Grant's anger further. Weeks later, Phelan's physical discomforts, nausea, headaches, and fatigue suggested a grim possibility. Reluctantly, Grant procured pregnancy tests, confirming their worst fears. With her condition becoming visibly apparent, Phelan had no choice but to seek medical attention, prompted by Grant's insistence. Their visit to the hospital did not go unnoticed, sparking speculative glances and whispers. This public scrutiny sowed the seeds of malicious rumours, suggesting an inappropriate relationship between Phelan and Grant. The community's gossip, once mere whispers, grew louder and more accusatory with every public appearance they made, exacerbating an already unbearable situation for both. Eventually, Grant and Phelan learned to ignore the swirling rumours. They understood that life had to go on, regardless of the town's whispers. Yet, Grant occasionally wrestled with the thought of escaping the relentless gossip, contemplating the drastic measure of living apart from Phelan. But the idea of asking her to leave, or abandoning her himself, was unthinkable. His protective instincts forbade it. Grant, who had always been distant from religious faith, found himself inexplicably drawn to seek solace one morning. Rising with an unusual urge, he wandered in the quiet of dawn, his feet leading him to a place he seldom visited by choice, the local church. Compelled by a force he couldn't understand, he entered, found a pew, and for the first time in a long while, prayed earnestly, seeking peace and a sliver of happiness for both him and Phelan. Meanwhile, Phelan faced her own set of challenges. Navigating the final stretch of her pregnancy, she visited the hospital for a routine checkup, which felt increasingly arduous. 8 months along, the weight of her unborn child made every movement, every step toward the hospital's entrance, a test of endurance. The bustling atmosphere of the hospital did little to ease her discomfort, making her all the more aware of the physical and emotional burden she carried. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, she noticed a blur of energy coming toward her. A young boy, no more than 5, with a mop of untamed hair and eyes brimming with earnestness, stopped abruptly in front of her. Panting slightly from his sprint, he looked up at her with a wide, toothy grin. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice high-pitched yet clear. "Do you need a hand with anything?" Pheelin, taken aback by the unexpected offer, couldn't help but smile at the boy's chivalry. "That's very kind of you, but I'm quite all right, thank you," she replied, her heart warmed by the gesture. Undeterred, the boy's gaze fell upon the bag slung over Phelin's shoulder. "Maybe I can carry your bag for you," he suggested, his small hands reaching out as if ready to take on the weight of the world. After a moment's hesitation, touched by his insistence, Phelan gently handed over her bag to the boy. "Well, if you insist. Thank you, young man." With a proud nod, the boy took the bag, adjusting its strap to fit his shoulder, and started walking beside her, his small steps trying to match her pace. They moved together in a companionable silence, the boy glancing up at Phelan every so often with a grin. Upon reaching the cool interior of the hospital, Phelan turned to the boy, her heart full of gratitude. "Thank you so much for your help. What's your name, young gentleman?" The boy puffed up his chest slightly, basking in the praise. "I'm Tristan," he declared, handing back the bag with a flourish. "It was lovely to meet you, Tristan. You've been a great help," Phelan said, her voice soft with appreciation. Just then, a man approached, his expression stern, with another young child cradled in his arms, asleep. His eyes narrowed slightly as they fell on Tristan, his brows furrowing in concern. "Tristan," he said, his voice firm. "Are you bothering this lady?" Phelan quickly interjected. "Oh no, not at all. He was just being a little gentleman and helping me with my bag." The man's features softened slightly, but he maintained a cautious demeanor. "I hope he wasn't a nuisance. Tristan, say sorry to the lady." Tristan's face fell, and he shuffled his feet. "I was just trying to help," he mumbled. Phelan knelt down to his level, her maternal instincts kicking in. "Tristan, you did a wonderful job helping me. There's no need to apologize. You're a very kind boy." The man, now looking a bit embarrassed, offered a small, grateful smile to Phelan. "I'm sorry if he troubled you. He's got a big heart but doesn't always know his boundaries." "No trouble at all," Phelan reassured, standing up. "It was a pleasure to meet both of you. Take care, Tristan. Keep being the kind young man you are." With a final wave to Tristan and a nod to the man, Phelan turned and made her way to her appointment, her spirits lifted by the unexpected kindness of a young boy. As Phelan settled into the somewhat uncomfortable waiting room chair, her mind kept drifting back to the man and the two children, especially the little one cradled in his arms. Concern etched deep in her heart. She couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to their story than met the eye. And when her name was finally called, she greeted her doctor with a warm, albeit distracted, smile. As they went through the usual motions of her checkup, Phelan's thoughts were elsewhere. Seizing a quiet moment, she decided to ask her doctor about the family she had encountered earlier. "I couldn't help but notice a man with two young boys earlier. The younger one seemed to be asleep. I just wondered, is everything okay with them?" Phelan asked, her voice tinged with concern. The doctor's expression softened, and he took a moment before responding, a sign that the story he was about to share was not an easy one. That was Raiden and his sons. Unfortunately, he is undergoing a tough battle with cancer and is here for his chemotherapy sessions. It's been a challenging journey for them. Phelan's hand instinctively went to her chest, her heart aching at the revelation. The struggles of the family, particularly the strength and resilience it must take for a single father to face such a daunting challenge while caring for two young children, deeply moved her. The older boy, Tristan, tries to help out as much as he can. He's quite mature for his age, always looking out for his father and little brother. the doctor continued, admiration evident in his voice. If you don't mind me asking, what about their mother? Is she around to help out? Phelan inquired, hoping for some silver lining in the family's plight. The doctor's expression turned somber, and she paused before answering, indicating the delicacy of the situation. It's a bit of a sad story, I'm afraid. Sandra left the family when the youngest was just a year old. She decided to start a new life with someone else, leaving Ryden to care for the boys on his own. This new piece of information made Phelan's heart sink even further. The thought of the father facing his illness while single-handedly raising 2 children, compounded by such a profound betrayal, was heart-wrenching. It's been tough on them, no doubt. Ryden has shown incredible resilience and love for his sons, but it's a lot for one person to bear, the doctor added, his voice laced with empathy. As Phelan returned home, the weight of the Thompson family's story heavy on her heart, she found herself enveloped in a wave of nostalgia and longing for her own family. She shared the story of the Thompson family with Grant and was curious if Grant knew anything about them. Ah, Ryden Thompson. Yes, I know of him. He's quite well regarded around here despite the hand he's been dealt, Grant said, his voice carrying a note of admiration. He lives over in that old mobile home on the edge of town, not much to look at, but he's done wonders making it a home for those boys. Grant paused, collecting his thoughts before continuing. Ryden's a carpenter by trade, works down at Jensen's wood shop. He's got a real knack for it too. Makes the most beautiful pieces you've ever seen. It's more than just a job for him, you can tell. Helps him cope, I reckon. A few days after her conversation with Uncle Grant, Phelan found herself standing outside Jensen's woodshop, her heart beating with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Taking a deep breath to steady her nerves, Phelan pushed open the door to the woodshop, the scent of freshly cut wood and varnish greeting her senses. The interior was a cozy chaos of woodworking tools, piles of lumber in various states of transformation, and finished pieces that showcased the skill and craftsmanship of their maker. She wandered through the shop, admiring the workmanship of the pieces on display, until she found Ryden busy at his workbench, his focus completely absorbed by the piece he was crafting. He looked up as she approached, his expression shifting from concentration to mild curiosity. "Good morning," Phelan greeted, offering a friendly smile. "I was hoping to discuss a custom piece I have in mind." Ryden wiped his hands on a cloth and extended one in greeting. "Good morning. I'm Ryden. What can I do for you?" Phelan returned the handshake, noting the strength and roughness of his hands, a testament to his craft. "I'm Phelan. I'm looking for someone to craft a wooden crib for my soon-to-be-born baby. I've heard great things about your work, and I thought something handcrafted would be really special." Ryden's face softened at the mention of the crib, a gentle smile playing at the corners of his lips. "I'd be honored to help with something so important. Do you have any specific designs in mind?" As they discussed ideas for the crib, Phelan took the opportunity to observe Ryden more closely, seeing the man she had heard so much about in action. He was patient, thoughtful, and clearly passionate about his work, qualities that she found both admirable and endearing. As their interactions grew from professional to personal, Phelan and Ryden discovered a mutual recognition that traced back to their brief encounter at the hospital. This shared moment became the foundation for deeper conversations, revealing a surprising and comforting connection between them. Phelan, who had initially sought out Ryden under the guise of commissioning a crib, found herself increasingly drawn to the woodshop, each visit cloaked in a new, often unnecessary woodworking project. The fluttering excitement in her heart at the thought of seeing Ryden was a sensation she hadn't anticipated, but cherished deeply. Ryden, for his part, felt a similar pull towards Fei Lin. The more time they spent together, the more he was drawn to her resilience, kindness, and the genuine warmth she exuded. Their bond deepened naturally, their meetings becoming more frequent and filled with meaningful exchanges. The revelation of Fei Lin's identity within the community and the unfortunate rumours came as a shock to Ryden. He had heard the whispers, but seeing Fei Lin for who she truly was, a strong and caring individual, dispelled any doubts he might have harboured. When the time came for Fei Lin to give birth, Ryden's presence at the hospital was a testament to the depth of their connection. He was there, not just as a friend, but as someone who had become an integral part of Fei Lin's life. The arrival of baby Arya was a joyous occasion, celebrated not just by Fei Lin and Ryden, but also by Ryden's sons, who eagerly awaited outside the maternity ward with flowers, embodying the newfound family unity. Uncle Grant, meanwhile, prepared for the baby's homecoming with all the love and anticipation of a family member. His role in Fei Lin's life, misunderstood by some, was that of a guardian and confidant, and he took great care in ensuring everything was ready for Arya's arrival. He had carefully selected a bouquet of vibrant flowers. Today was special. He was about to bring Fei Lin and their newborn baby home from the maternity hospital. The air was crisp, and a gentle breeze played with the ribbon tied around the bouquet as Grant placed it on the passenger seat of his car. As he drove, his mind wandered to Fei Lin and the baby, imagining their future together, filled with love, laughter, and the inevitable challenges of parenthood. The gas station was just a brief stop on this significant day, a mundane task that he performed almost mechanically, his thoughts elsewhere. Inside the gas station, the transaction was quick, the clerk offering a polite smile as Grant handed over the cash. Stepping back outside, the sound of the pump clicked in rhythm with his thoughts. It was a moment like any other until the harsh words cut through the air, shattering his reverie. "Look, it's that guy who sleeps with his niece." The words hit Grant like a physical blow, the vile accusation igniting a fire of anger within him. He had heard the rumours before, whispers and snickers born out of malice and ignorance. They didn't know the truth. Without a word, Grant turned toward the source of the venomous words, his fists clenched at his sides. He saw them, a group of men, smirking, unaware of the storm they had just unleashed. In that moment, Grant was consumed by a fury he had never allowed himself to express. He moved with a purpose, his actions swift and decisive. The first punch landed with a satisfying thud, the impact sending one of the men staggering back. The second fell just as quickly, a testament to Grant's pent-up rage. But it was the last one, the instigator, who bore the brunt of Grant's wrath. As he stood over the man, his breath ragged, his knuckles bruised, Grant felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The immediate rush of adrenaline faded, leaving behind a hollow victory. He knew this wasn't him. He wasn't a man who solved problems with his fists. He was better than this, better than the lies and the hatred. With a heavy heart, Grant turned away from the scene, the whispers of his conscience reminding him that this wasn't the answer. The flowers, once a symbol of joy, now seemed a poignant reminder of the beauty and fragility of life. Grant knew that he would have to face the consequences of his actions, but in that moment, all he wanted was to hold Fei Lin and their baby, to reassure them that no matter what the world threw their way, they would face it together, with love as their shield. The hospital's sliding doors parted, revealing Fei Lin, radiant yet weary, cradling her newborn with a tenderness that filled the air. Rhydon, flanked by Tristan and Dylan, stepped forward, their arms laden with blossoms, each petal a silent witness to the new life and the unity it heralded. Uncle Grant, a few paces away, held his own bouquet, a soft smile gracing his lips, his presence a steadfast pillar in the tapestry of their lives. The evening air was filled with the clinking of dishes and the low murmur of familial conversations as they gathered around the dinner table. Laughter and light banter wove through the room, a celebration of life's simple yet profound moments. As the night deepened and the little one's needs beckoned Phelan away, the boys trailing behind her in a parade of youthful curiosity, Grant and Rhydon found themselves alone on the porch. The world outside seemed to hold its breath, the only sound the distant chirping of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves. "Grant, what happened?" Rhydon finally broke the silence, his voice tinged with concern. Grant sighed, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. It was nothing at first, just words thrown around at the gas station, but things escalated quickly. I lost my temper, Rhydon. Rhydon's brow furrowed, understanding dawning. The Brooks boys, they've always been trouble. But leaving tonight, Grant? Is that really necessary? Grant looked out into the darkness, his gaze distant. It's not just about what happened today. It's the culmination of everything. I can't risk bringing that kind of danger around Phelan and the baby. They're too important. Rhydon leaned forward, clasping his hands together. And what about you, Grant? You're important to them too. We can handle this together. Grant shook his head, a sad smile on his lips. This is different, Rhydon. I've made up my mind, but I need you to promise me something. Anything, Rhydon replied without hesitation. Take care of them. You're the backbone of this family now. I trust you more than anyone else to keep them safe and happy. Rhydon's voice was steady, resolute. You have my word, Grant. I'll protect them with everything I've got. The two men stood, their silhouette framed against the soft indoor light, a silent testament to the promises made and the challenges that lay ahead. As they turned to go back inside, the air between them was filled with an unspoken understanding, a mutual respect that would endure the trials of the night and the uncertainties of tomorrow. Phelan stood on the precipice of yet another profound change in her life. This time, the stakes were deeply personal as her only remaining family member, Uncle Grant, made a monumental sacrifice. In a selfless act of love, he decided to relinquish his quaint home and the life he'd built in their small town. This wasn't just a move, it was a gesture to cleanse Phelan's tarnished reputation and offer her a fresh start. Uncle Grant's hope was that by stepping aside, he would pave the way for Rhydon and his two sons to fill the void in Phelan's life, fostering a new, unconventional family unit. True to Uncle Grant's wishes, a dramatic shift occurred almost immediately. The very next morning, Phelan awoke to a world subtly altered by her uncle's departure. A note, left in the quiet of the night, lay waiting for her. In it, Grant had penned a few final words, a mixture of farewell and reassurance. Notably absent were any means of reaching him, no address, nothing. He expressed a belief that separation, devoid of strings, was for the best, for him, for Phelan, and for the budding family he hoped she would form with Rhydon and his sons. With Rhydon's arrival, life for Phelan and the children significantly improved. They started planting a garden and fenced off their property, which was necessary since the wild animals would sneak in and damage the cucumber and tomato patches. Rhydon was respected in the village, primarily for his hands. He had an uncanny ability to craft something useful out of what seemed like mere junk. Phelan, with her gentle eyes and warm smile, had finally let her guard down, allowing the tranquility of her surroundings to seep into her soul. Together, with their 2 young boys and a baby girl, they had woven a tapestry of love and laughter that filled their cozy home. It was a crisp autumn morning when the leaves painted the ground in shades of amber and gold, that Rydon, with a slight tremor in his hands, opened the letter that would once again test the bounds of their resilience. Phelan watched from the kitchen window, a sense of foreboding knotting her stomach as she noticed the colour drain from Rydon's face. "What is it, love?" Phelan's voice was laced with concern as she approached him, drying her hands on her apron. Rydon looked up, his eyes a tumultuous sea of emotion. "It's the doctors. They've found something. It's metastasized, Phelan." The words hung heavily in the air, a sombre echo of the battles they had fought before. Phelan felt her heart plummet, a silent scream lodged in her throat. She reached out, her hand finding Rydon's, their fingers intertwining as if to brace against the storm that loomed on the horizon. "We'll get through this, Rydon. We've faced down our demons before," Phelan whispered. Rydon squeezed her hand, the unspoken fears and hopes mingling in the silence that enveloped them. "I know, Phelan. It's just, I thought we were past all this. I thought we'd finally found our haven." The children, sensing the shift in the air, came bounding into the room, their laughter a stark contrast to the gravity that had settled over their parents. Phelan forced a smile, her maternal instinct shielding them from the storm that raged in her heart. "Everything's going to be okay, kids. Why don't we go outside and play in the leaves?" Her voice was a melody of strength and tenderness, a lullaby to the fears that threatened to overwhelm them. As the family stepped outside, the crisp air and the golden hue of the autumn leaves seemed to cast a spell of momentary forgetfulness over their worries. Rydon and Phelan watched their children play, their laughter a balm to their wounded spirits. In the quiet of the night, when the world seemed to stand still and the stars watched over the earth with a gentle glow, Rydon's spirit took flight. It was a peaceful departure, one that carried the grace of unspoken goodbyes and the silent promise of a love that transcends the confines of the mortal realm. Phelan, her heart intertwined with Rydon's and his son's, felt the shift in the fabric of their lives even before the dawn broke, a silent acknowledgement from her soul to his as he embarked on his journey to the beyond. The days that followed were a blur of tears, soft whispers of remembrance, and the heart-wrenching beauty of a family coming together in the face of profound loss. Phelan, with her heart heavy with grief, became a pillar of strength for the 2 boys, who looked up to her with eyes filled with the innocence of youth and the shadow of their shared loss. One evening, as the sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, Phelan gathered the boys and Arya around the fireplace, the crackling of the fire a comforting backdrop to the conversation she knew they needed to have. "Kids," Phelan began, her voice soft but steady, "I know that the world seems a little darker right now, a little more uncertain. But I want you to know, more than anything, that I am here for you. Always." The boys, their eyes wide and attentive, nodded, the weight of their father's absence a tangible presence in the room. "Your dad, Rydon, he was a remarkable man. Though he may not be with us in the way we're used to, his spirit, his love, it's all around us." Phelan paused, her gaze lingering on the boys, seeing so much of Rydon in their expressions, in the tilt of their heads, in the way they listened with rapt attention. I may not have given birth to you, but you are my children in my heart, in every way that counts. I promise to honor Raiden's memory by loving you, by being there for you through every high and low, through every joy and every challenge. You are my family, and that bond, it's unbreakable. The boys, moved by Feilin's words, leaned into her embrace, their small arms wrapping around her with a trust and love that spoke volumes. Absently stirring the porridge, Feilin's thoughts drifted back to the happiest years of her life, and quiet tears began to fall. Thankfully, Tristan was preoccupied with his morning tasks and didn't catch sight of his mother's silent sorrow, sparing her the need for explanations. "All right, sweetheart, the porridge is ready," Feilin managed to say, regaining her composure. "Could you help out by feeding Arya this morning? And could you gently remind Dylan that leaving more than half his porridge uneaten means no treats later?" "Of course, Mom, why worry? It's really no hassle, especially now during the holidays," Tristan replied, eager to assist. "Thank you, my dear. I'm not sure what I'd do without you," Feilin said, her gaze filled with affection as she looked at her son. After a swift breakfast, Feilin quickly changed and set off for the warehouse, where she had been employed as a stocker for the last 7 months. As his mother departed, Tristan stepped back from the window and headed to rouse his younger sibling. "Time to get up, sleepyhead, or you'll miss out on the day's adventures," he coaxed. Dylan cracked open one eye, then the other, reluctantly accepting the inevitable, as his brother's persistent nudging left no room for further slumber. He cherished the summer days, warm, with the garden brimming with berries and fruits. It was his idea of paradise. "All right, let's freshen up, grab a quick bite, and head out while the little one's still in dreamland," Tristan proposed, nudging his brother along. With a sleepy nod, Dylan trudged to the sink. Soon he was sitting across from Tristan, eagerly devouring the aromatic porridge. Having consumed about half, he glanced at Tristan, who had done the same. Without a word, Tristan combined the leftovers onto one plate and tucked it into a canvas bag, ensuring it was discreetly packed. With a shared glance, the boys set off towards the forest, where a little hungry creature awaited them, a wolf cub they had stumbled upon a week earlier while berry picking and had named Grey. This secret forest friend became an exclusive bond between them, a secret closely guarded from everyone else. Arya, their sister, noticed their frequent morning disappearances, but assumed they were off foraging, given the berries and mushrooms they brought back. Even Feilin, engrossed in her own routines, remained oblivious to her son's clandestine escapades. Today, with Tristan leading and carrying the canvas bag filled with simple provisions for Grey, they hurried along, mindful of the impending storm. "We need to pick up the pace, Dylan. Those lightning flashes mean we might get caught in the rain. Thankfully, we built that shelter for Grey just in time." "It's humble, but it's something," Tristan observed, concern lacing his voice. Dylan glanced upwards and couldn't help but agree with Tristan. The sky looked like a vast expanse of grey fabric, akin to the cloth used to drape over a birdcage at dusk. The urgency of their mission spurred them to quicken their steps, hoping to beat the imminent downpour that threatened to unleash a deluge upon the earth. Back at the warehouse, Feilin had just arrived. "Look who decided to show up!" a raspy voice greeted her sarcastically. Feilin turned to find Wyatt, the owner of the warehouse, eyeing her with a mix of annoyance and curiosity. "Morning, Wyatt. I apologize for the delay. It took a bit longer to get the children ready today," she offered, mustering a polite smile despite the discomfort. Wyatt scrutinized her with a disdainful smirk before beckoning her over with a dismissive wave. Phelan, feeling a chill run down her spine, moved towards him with hesitant steps. With a snort, Wyatt's expression softened into a deceitful grin. "Phelan, I've been going over the inventory reports and it seems we're short a few boxes. Any insights on that?" Phelan felt a lump form in her throat. "Wyatt, that's not within my purview. I'm here to stock the shelves with whatever is provided." Wyatt's gaze narrowed, studying her as if she were a specimen under a microscope. "I'm inclined to believe there's more to this story." "And what might that be?" Phelan pressed, sensing the conversation veering into troubling territory. Wyatt leaned in, his tone dripping with insinuation. "It appears someone's been pilfering goods from the warehouse, and at the moment, you're my prime suspect. After all, you're a widow with 4 kids to feed. Wouldn't that tempt you to take something and sell it on the side?" Tears sprang to Phelan's eyes, her voice quivering with indignation. "Are you suggesting that my circumstances make me a thief, Wyatt? How dare you involve my children in such baseless accusations?" The warehouse owner's frown deepened as he stepped closer, his breath tainted with the stale stench of alcohol and tobacco. "Listen, darling, if you had someone to stand up for you, say someone like Ryden, none of this would be happening," Wyatt insinuated, his words laced with an unsettling familiarity. He flashed a sly grin, wetting his parched lips. "So your husband's gone, but life goes on, right? Why not consider someone else? Maybe someone like me? I've got it all. Wealth, respect in this town. Isn't that enough?" Phelan recoiled, memories of a similar confrontation a few months back, which nearly cost her the job, flooding back. She realized too late that Wyatt's persistence was far from waning. "And where do you think you're off to, beautiful? There's no need to hurry. Those boxes can wait. Remember, no one's indispensable here, Phelan," Wyatt jeered, his disdain palpable. Facing him, Phelan's resolve hardened. "What is it you want, Wyatt? If you're going to fire me, then do it. But I refuse to be ensnared by your vile games." "Fine," Wyatt retorted, his smirk fading. "Then, forget about your paycheck. Consider it compensation for the missing boxes," he declared with a dismissive wave. With a heavy heart, Phelan collected her belongings and exited the warehouse, her steps leading her home. Tears carved paths down her cheeks, mourning not just the injustice of the moment, but the relentless cruelty of her fate. She was well aware of Wyatt's intentions, his relentless attempts to exploit her vulnerability. Despite her clear rejections and her firm stance against tying her life to his, he persisted. As she walked away, Wyatt watched, basking in the twisted satisfaction of his perceived dominance. In his mind, this was a victory, a testament to his control and influence. Convinced of his own authority, he was certain Phelan would eventually succumb, forced by circumstance to seek his favour once more. Phelan treaded down the street, her steps heavy with the weight of the job she had just lost, a lifeline as crucial to her as the very air she breathed. Yet, she was resolute in her decision not to return to the warehouse, a resolve seemingly echoed by a sudden flash of lightning that cleaved the sky in an ominous display. Quickening her pace, she hoped to reach the sanctuary of her home before the impending storm unleashed its fury. Unbeknownst to her, her sons were harbouring similar thoughts of urgency. At the forest's fringe, Tristan and Dylan scanned the area for any sign of Grey, their wolf cub friend, who was mysteriously absent. Could he have been captured? By hunters? Or maybe an owl like I saw on TV? Dylan's voice trembled with concern. Tristan surveyed the surroundings, noting the undisturbed state of Grey's den. "It doesn't look like anyone's been here. See how the branches are still intact? No, he's fine, he reassured, though Dylan's worry lingered. Realizing they needed to return before Arya woke, Tristan proposed, "Let's leave the porridge here for Grey. He'll find it when he comes back," and started back toward the village, with Dylan casting a lingering glance at the deserted den before reluctantly following. Upon reaching home, Phelin's heart sank at the sight of the unlocked gate, a flurry of concerns racing through her mind about her son's whereabouts and the safety of their sister left unattended. The brewing storm added urgency to her worries. Why would they venture out, especially now? And Arya, left alone. That's not like them, she fretted. The ominous roll of thunder and a streak of purple lightning heightened her anxiety. Entering the house, the absence of Tristan's sneakers and Dylan's sandals from the worn shoe rack confirmed her fears, leaving her to ponder their recklessness amid the gathering storm. Those little rascals, Phelin mused, with a mix of exasperation and affection. To her immense relief, she found Arya still nestled in the warmth of her bed, her breathing steady and peaceful. Glancing into her daughter's room, Phelin couldn't help but smile, reminiscing about the mornings when her little girl would stretch and reach out for her with tiny hands. It had been months since she'd witnessed such a moment, her days beginning before dawn and ending in the evening's dim light. As the rain began to pour, tapping on the roof with the intensity of a scattered handful of large peas, Phelin's concern for her sons grew. She rushed to the doorway and, looking out, saw the gate swing wide as Tristan and Dylan hurried home, soaked but safe. Catching their breath, Tristan looked up in surprise. "Mom, what are you doing home? Aren't you supposed to be at work?" Dylan, slightly behind, tried to make himself small, hoping to evade immediate questioning. With a mix of relief and frustration, Phelin threw up her hands. "And why aren't you two at home? How could you leave Arya alone like that?" "Sorry, Mom, we just—" Dylan began, only to be silenced by a subtle nudge from Tristan. Noticing the silent exchange, Phelin sensed they were keeping something from her. She adopted a mock sternness, barely concealing her amusement. "All right, my little adventurers, are we going to share the truth, or are we playing secret agents today?" The boys shared a hesitant look. Then Tristan took a deep breath. "Mum, please don't be upset, okay? We found a wolf cub in the forest. We think it's lost its parents. We've been taking care of it, feeding it even. We didn't bring it home because we thought the adults might take it away. We've only been sharing our own porridge with it, not Arya's, we promise." Hearing her son's earnest explanation, Phelin was struck by the maturity of his words and the compassion behind their actions. Tears sprang to her eyes, not from anger, but from a swell of pride and tenderness. In that moment, the thought of reprimanding them was the furthest thing from her mind. Here were her boys, barely out of their own childhood, yet so ready to extend their kindness to a creature in need. "Okay, you can continue to take care of your little friend, but from now on, only if I'm with you. Understood?" Phelin's voice softened as she drew her sons into a warm embrace. "I was so worried when I found the house empty." "Mum, but how will you come with us to the forest? Don't you have work?" Dylan's question, tinged with concern, was quickly met with a gentle nudge from Tristan, signaling him to tread carefully. With a sigh that carried a mix of resignation and relief, Phelin shared, "Actually, I won't be going to work for a bit. I'm taking some time off, so I'll be here with you. We can do some baking together, like we used to. After that, we'll figure things out, maybe look for a new job." Dylan's eyes lit up at the news. "Really? You'll bake with us again, just like old times?" His excitement was infectious, and even Arya stirred from her sleep, drawn by her brother's jubilant outburst.
As the rain outside grew heavier, forming a steady backdrop to their indoor sanctuary, Phelan cherished the unexpected opportunity to reconnect with her children. The job that had once consumed all her daylight hours was gone, but in its place came a precious chance to make new memories with her family.
She found comfort in the thought, maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Every cloud does indeed have a silver lining. As the last droplets of rain fell, Tristan and Dylan eagerly coaxed Phelan into checking on Grey in the forest. "He might need our help," Tristan insisted with wide, earnest eyes. Phelan hesitated, the practical part of her mind listing a dozen reasons why they should stay put. But the pleading looks from the two kids melted her resolve. "All right, let's make sure Grey is safe," she conceded, masking her reluctance with a smile. The forest greeted them with an ethereal beauty, the aftermath of the rain casting a spell over the woods. The air was thick with mist, weaving through the trees like wraiths, and the sunlight filtering through the canopy turned the dew-laden grass into a carpet of sparkling jewels. Tristan's focus was singular. He dashed ahead to the spot they had last seen Grey, his heart sinking as he found it empty. "Grey is gone!" he cried out. He gestured frantically towards a dense thicket, the disappointment evident on his youthful face. "We left him right here, I swear!" Phelan exchanged a knowing glance with Dylan, her eyebrow arched skeptically. "Could this be another wild tale from the depths of your imaginations?" she teased, half expecting them to confess to a made-up adventure. Yet, before the moment could dissolve into gentle chiding, a soft rustle from the underbrush halted their banter. As Phelan turned towards the sound, a fleeting shadow darted deeper into the forest, its presence undeniable, yet mysterious. "Who's there?" Phelan called out, her voice a mix of curiosity and caution. The playful skepticism vanished, replaced by a genuine intrigue about the shadow's owner and its connection to the elusive Grey. Then a sudden wail of a baby shattered the forest's tranquility, sending a wave of confusion and fear through Phelan. Her heart raced, the sound so out of place in the dense woods. "Who's out there? Show yourself, or I'm calling the police," she yelled, her voice betraying her alarm. The eerie silence that followed was broken only by another cry, tugging at Phelan's heartstrings. Despite the fear that screamed within her to flee, her motherly instincts wouldn't allow her to ignore a child's distress. "I have to check this out," she murmured to herself, her resolve steeling. Turning to Tristan, she placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Tristan, keep Dylan and your sister close. Don't move from this spot, okay?" Her tone left no room for negotiation, and Tristan nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. With cautious steps, Phelan pushed through the underbrush, the cries guiding her to a small clearing. There, bathed in a shaft of sunlight that broke through the canopy, stood an ancient tree with a baby's cradle at its base. Phelan's breath caught in her throat as she approached, her mind racing with questions. As she peered into the cradle, her eyes met those of an infant, its cries ceasing as if comforted by her presence. Without a second thought, Phelan scooped up the cradle, her protective instincts in full force. "It's going to be okay," she whispered, more to herself than the baby, as she hastened back to her own children, the cradle secure in her arms. The moment the children laid eyes on the baby, their earlier fears and the mystery of Grey faded into the background, replaced by a wave of excitement and curiosity about the tiny newcomer. With the infant safely in tow, Phelan hurried back home, her maternal instincts guiding her every step. Upon arriving, She wasted no time in alerting the authorities, dialing the police with a sense of urgency. As the baby's cries filled the room, Phelan gently lifted her, feeling an immediate rush of affection and concern. "Now, what can I find to feed you, little one?" she mused aloud, realizing her pantry lacked anything suitable for a baby. A light bulb went off as she recalled her neighbour Audrey, who had recently navigated her own infant feeding challenges. Audrey might have some formula to spare, Phelan thought, a plan forming in her mind. Meanwhile, the children huddled around, their faces alight with fascination at the unexpected guest. "Okay, kids, I need to dash over to Aunt Audrey's to grab some baby food. I'm counting on you to keep an eye on our little friend here. Tristan, you're the captain now," Phelan instructed, with a mix of seriousness and warmth before hurrying out the door. Returning in record time, Phelan cradled the baby, gently feeding her with the borrowed formula, a sigh of relief escaping her lips as the infant began to settle. But their moment of calm was abruptly pierced by the sound of sirens approaching. Expecting a routine response, Phelan was taken aback as not one, but a flurry of police cars swarmed her home, the flashing lights casting an eerie glow through the windows. The sudden commotion suggested that this was far from a simple case of a lost child. An officer stepped out from the lead car and approached Phelan's door, his partner close behind. With a calm yet authoritative tone, he inquired, "Where's the child? And who else is inside with you and the children?" "It's just us," Phelan responded, her voice laced with confusion. The officers shared a brief look before stepping into the house, their movements efficient as they conducted a thorough search, ensuring no one else was concealed within. "Officer, please understand, we're not harbouring anyone. We stumbled upon the baby abandoned in the forest," Phelan explained, her tone earnest, seeking to clarify the misunderstanding. "Clear!" announced one of the officers, confirming the absence of any other individuals. Shortly after, medical personnel gently took the baby, securing her in an ambulance which then swiftly departed. Phelan later learned the heart-wrenching truth that the infant had been reported missing just a few hours earlier, casting a solemn shadow over the day's earlier events. As one officer was in the midst of questioning, a second one, distinguishable by his glasses, approached with an air of unease. After a brief, nervous moment, he requested to take over from his colleague. Removing his glasses, he revealed a warm smile. "How are you, Phelan?" he inquired, his voice carrying a hint of familiarity. Phelan, initially puzzled, scrutinized his features until recognition dawned upon her. Hank Brooks?" she exclaimed, her expression lighting up with astonishment and delight. "It's been so long! How wonderful to see you!" She bit back the comment on how much he had changed and matured, choosing instead to simply admire the transformation. Hank had evolved into a robust figure, yet his eyes, those expressive windows to his soul, remained as captivating as ever. "It's been ages," she remarked, the nostalgia evident in her voice. Hank nodded, sharing a slice of his life. "I've been away at the academy, then stationed elsewhere. I only transferred back here last month." As the police wrapped up their procedures, they arranged for Phelan to revisit the location where she had discovered the baby the following day. Hank Brooks took a personal interest in the case, though his focus seemed less on the investigation, satisfied with the baby's safe return to her parents, and more on rekindling his connection with Phelan. Years had not dulled Hank's feelings for her, his affection as palpable as ever. Phelan couldn't help but notice Hank's newfound reserve, a stark contrast to his earlier demeanour, speaking volumes with his silence. The discovery of a pair of gloves near the scene provided an unexpected lead in the kidnapping case. Without this fortuitous find, the police had little to go on. The following day, Hank paid another visit, bringing sweets for the kids, a gesture that warmed Phelan's heart. As they sat on the porch, engaged in conversation, Hank shared updates on the sluggish progress of the investigation. He casually mentioned finding a pair of gloves, showing Phelan a photograph of the evidence, indicating it was one of the few leads they had. The sight of the gloves triggered a flash of recognition in Phelan. She remembered seeing the same brand at the warehouse where she worked, exclusively used by her boss. The realization struck her with the force of a revelation. "I think I might have a clue," she declared, rising abruptly. Hank, intrigued and slightly amused by her sudden enthusiasm, asked, "A clue about what?" Phelan quickly explained her connection to the gloves. Reacting promptly, Hank called his partner to inquire about any traces of blood on the gloves, given their thin material and vulnerability to punctures. The callback came with encouraging news. Traces of blood were found on the gloves. The DNA analysis pointed directly to Wyatt Fisher, making him the primary suspect. The police swiftly pieced together his movements on the day of the kidnapping, confirming his involvement. It emerged that the baby was his sister-in-law's child, the second in line to inherit the considerable wealth of Wyatt's father-in-law. Motivated by greed, Wyatt had hoped to redirect the family fortune solely to his own offspring, unveiling a motive as old as time. Wyatt faced serious charges, including kidnapping and an alleged attempt at murder. In a strategic move, his legal team negotiated a plea deal that significantly reduced his potential sentence. Recognizing the opportunity to minimize his time behind bars, Wyatt promptly accepted the offer and pleaded guilty. As a result, he was sentenced to serve just under 5 years in prison, a considerable reduction from what could have been a much longer term had the case gone to trial. The past few weeks had been grueling for Hank. He found himself slumped over his desk, wearily sifting through a mountain of paperwork, when yet another notification popped up on his computer screen. The police department had recently implemented a new system designed to alert officers about potential matches in their database. While the intent was to streamline investigations, the reality was far from it. The system was overly sensitive, bombarding Hank with a relentless stream of notifications, most of which led nowhere. The constant interruptions not only disrupted his focus, but also became a source of frustration, as the majority of these alerts turned out to be false alarms or irrelevant leads. With a weary sigh, Hank began the monotonous task of dismissing the notifications, clicking the X on each with mechanical precision. They seemed endless, a digital parade of irrelevance that tested his patience. But as he prepared to close another, a name caught his eye, halting his automatic motions. He leaned in, squinting at the screen, disbelief tightening his features. The name displayed was unmistakably Phelan Jones. His heart rate quickened as he clicked on the notification, expanding the details for a closer look. The message revealed a shocking connection. The DNA collected from Phelan, a remnant of a harrowing assault she had endured years earlier, had found a match, and the match was none other than Wyatt Fisher. Hank's mind raced, the implications of this discovery sending a chill down his spine. This was not just another notification, it was a revelation that could reopen old wounds and bring long-awaited justice to light. ChatGPT. Hank was overwhelmed, his mind a tumultuous mix of emotions. He was incensed by Wyatt Fisher's actions, yet filled with compassion and love for Phelan. As a police officer, his sense of duty was paramount, yet in that moment, the lines between professional obligation and personal emotion blurred. If not for his badge, he might have crossed a line in seeking justice. Driven by a need to do something, anything, Hank grabbed his coat and stepped out into the pouring rain. He purchased a bouquet of flowers, a small gesture of comfort, and drove straight to Phelan's house. When she answered the door, Hank didn't hesitate. He pulled her into a heartfelt embrace, a silent conveyance of support and solidarity. Phelan, caught off guard, was unable to grasp the reason behind his visit or the intensity of his emotions. As Hank stepped back, his eyes brimming with tears, he offered her a tremulous smile, an attempt to bridge the gap between his feelings and what he had yet to disclose. "You've been through so much, yet you still find a way to smile," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Phelan's expression, a canvas of confusion, prompted him to continue. Taking a deep breath, Hank braced himself to deliver the news. "The man responsible for the recent kidnapping is also the one who hurt you years ago," he revealed, the words heavy with significance. It took a moment for the gravity of his statement to sink in. Phelan had spent years pushing away the memories of her assault, but Hank's revelation brought them surging back. As she processed the information, she realized all the overlooked signs pointing to Wyatt. The shock of understanding was palpable. How had she never suspected him? As the gravity of Hank's revelation settled, the light in Phelan's eyes dimmed, replaced by a shadow of fear. Hank, witnessing the change, was filled with a deep sadness. He reached out, taking her hands in his, offering a quiet strength. "I wish I could have been there for you, to protect you," he confessed, his voice heavy with regret. "But I promise I'll do everything in my power to ensure justice is served, and he pays for what he's done." They embraced, a silent exchange of comfort and shared sorrow. When they parted, Phelan's gaze fell upon the rain-drenched flowers, a smile flickering back to life. "Are these for me?" she asked, her voice lighter. Hank, with a gentle smile, handed her the bouquet. The simple act, the scent of the flowers, seemed to lift the room's heaviness. Phelan leaned in, her kiss a soft whisper of gratitude that lingered in Hank's heart as a cherished memory. "Thank you," she whispered before stepping back inside. True to his word, Hank pursued justice relentlessly. The case against Wyatt Fisher was reopened, leading to a court trial that concluded with a significant sentence of 15 years in prison for his crimes. In the days that followed, the police department, led by Hank, organized a special visit to Phelan's home. They came to honor Tristan and Dylan, whose innocent courage had inadvertently led to the baby's rescue. The ceremony was a small tribute to the boys' adventurous spirits and their unintended heroism. Ryan and Amanda Garrett, the grateful parents of the rescued baby, joined the police, bringing gifts for Phelan's children. Touched by the family's modest living conditions, Ryan extended an offer of support to Phelan and her family, a gesture of profound gratitude for the role they played in bringing his baby home. Ryan Garrett's generous offer paved a new path for Phelan, providing her with a stable job at his farm and the opportunity to further her education. The children too benefited, receiving everything they needed for school. Hank watched the unfolding generosity with a contented smile. As the excitement died down and normalcy returned, the boys busied themselves with their new toys, their joy infectious. Phelan looked on, her heart full, as Hank, having finished his shift, decided to stay. He lent a hand with the toys, engaging with the children in their play. Phelan retreated to the kitchen, preparing dinner, her heart warmed by the laughter and chatter outside. This afternoon felt like a turning point, a cozy, joyful moment amidst the chaos of life. With a deep breath, she resolved to embrace the present, fortified by her past challenges. Unbeknownst to her, this period marked the beginning of a lasting peace and happiness, a stark contrast to her tumultuous past. The children grew fond of Hank, who became a regular presence, visiting every other day. But after 3 months, Hank decided it was time for a significant change. One day, instead of his usual car, he arrived in a large box truck, honking to announce his presence. Phelan and the boys emerged to find Hank, clad in work boots and a uniform, ready for a big move. "Ready to move?" he asked, a new chapter waiting to unfold. The family relocated to Hank's spacious home, leaving behind the confines of their modest living. Hank, who had been through a divorce that was amicable despite its pretense, found a new sense of fulfillment. With Phelan and the children, his house transformed into a home filled with love and laughter, a testament to the unexpected twists and turns of life that led them to find contentment in each other's company. Phelan's house, now vacated by her family's move, was not destined to remain unoccupied for long. She had one significant request for Hank: to assist in locating her Uncle Grant. Given Phelan's newfound prominence in the town and the network of connections at their disposal, they were optimistic about their chances. Phelan was patient, understanding the search could be lengthy, but remained hopeful for a reunion. On a day like any other, Hank instructed Phelan not to worry about dinner, as he had plans for them to dine out. However, the evening took an unexpected turn. Instead of heading to a restaurant, they drove to Phelan's former home, now bustling with movers seemingly moving furniture in. Confused, Phelan watched as a man in a uniform emerged from the house. At first glance, she mistook him for a mover, but her heart leaped as she recognized him as her Uncle Grant. Overcome with emotion, she rushed into his arms, her tears flowing freely as they embraced. Grant, known for his stern exterior, greeted her with a gentle smile and laughter, revealing the warmth and kindness she always knew lay beneath. The revelation that Grant had left the house to Phelan so she could live happily was overwhelming. Her gratitude extended to everyone who played a part in this heartfelt reunion. As it turned out, Grant hadn't been far away at all and had found companionship in a woman who shared his quiet, reserved nature. This turn of events brought a new chapter of joy and connection to Phelan's life, enriched by the presence of her beloved uncle and the supportive community around them. In a quiet spring, amidst the bloom of fresh beginnings, Hank and Phelan exchanged vows in a ceremony that was the epitome of intimacy and love. Surrounded by close family and friends, they stepped into a new life together, their hearts full of hope and joy. As the seasons turned, their happiness blossomed further with the arrival of a baby girl, a symbol of their love and unity. They named her Victoria, a name befitting the victory and strength that had characterized their journey together. Victoria's arrival brought new laughter and warmth to their home, her presence a constant reminder of the love that had grown and prevailed through the challenges they had faced. The family, now larger and more vibrant, thrived in the love and support that surrounded them. Uncle Grant, with his quiet strength and newfound happiness, became a doting great uncle to Victoria, his life enriched by the family bonds that had deepened. Tristan and Dylan, now older brothers, embraced their roles with enthusiasm, their adventures now including the gentle care of their baby sister. The community that had supported Phelan through her trials continued to be a source of friendship and support, celebrating with the family the joys and milestones that life brought their way. In this tapestry of life, woven with threads of resilience, love, and unity, everyone found their happiness. Hank and Phelan, at the heart of this tapestry, cherished each moment, grateful for the journey that had brought them together and the future they were building, one filled with love, laughter, and the endless possibilities